This early look at the upcoming Battlefield 1 DLC Apocalypse, which is of course the last Battlefield 1 DLC, is made possible thanks to a game capture event sponsored by EA and DICE. Hey folks, Dave here, and like I said, today we're going to be taking a very early look at the last Battlefield 1 expansion, which launches in February 2018. As the name Apocalypse implies, this DLC is going to feature some of the most brutal fighting from World War I, a war that at times people thought was going to be the end of civilization as they knew it. This DLC is going to cover famous names like Passchendaele and the Somme. And again, today, while this content is still in an early development stage and is untextured as you can see from the footage, we're going to get a first glimpse at these historic and well-known battlegrounds. What I want to do in this preview video is walk you guys through a couple of the historical scenarios that these maps are based off of, and also give you a look at what each one of those maps looks like and how it plays. This DLC is going to come with a number of maps. So far, the ones that are confirmed are Caporetto, Passchendaele, River Somme, and then two maps that I believe are going to focus on the game mode, the new game mode that I'll talk about here in a second. These two maps are London Calling and Razor's Edge. That new game mode is going to be called Air Assault, and as the name implies, it's going to focus on Battlefield 1's very intense, and in my opinion quite fun, dogfighting mechanics. There's no word yet on which playing classes are going to take part, but I would imagine the different fighter variants are going to play a huge part. It could be interesting though if other variants like attack planes are also spawnable, as you could have two players working together to take down the more nimble fighters around you. This DLC, like previous ones, are going to come with a number of new weapons, but because these are all still works in progress, I'm not going to talk about them just yet. It'll also include a handful of melee weapons, and it looks like the AA rocket gun gadget, used for shooting a single round of powerful flak at aircraft, might be making its return appearance in this DLC. It was tested for the Turning Tides DLC, but didn't make the final cut. Again, it's back here, we might see it in the final launch. That's just a quick overview of what is currently planned for this expansion pack. Let's now talk about a couple of the maps, and the one that I actually want to start with is the Battle of the Somme. I want to start here because this is the map that made the biggest impression on me. Historically, the Battle of the Somme took place between July and November of 1916. This was an attempt by the Allies to hasten a quick victory, and as you might expect by the fact that the battle lasted for 5 months, that really didn't work out. Over the course of this wide-ranging battle, more than 3 million men fought for their countries, and more than 1 million were killed or wounded doing so, making it one of the most bloody battles in recorded human history. This battle affected so many people that just the name, the Somme, has a grim overhang to the word even today. While this battle did involve some trench warfare, it was a relatively mobile fight, as the British were able to make a lot of advances into the German-held lines with the help of the French, and you're going to see this in the in-game footage. The reason that I chose this map to speak about first is because of just the initial charge out of the fog that I experienced playing as the German defenders. The mode here is Conquest Assault, which means that the defending team has all of the flags at the start of the match, and the attacking forces have to take all of the flags to win the match. While the German defenders on this map do have a flag advantage, because of how Conquest Assault works, if they lose all of the capture points, all the flags, they cannot spawn at their main base. You have to just retake a flag if you can to let your teammates respawn, or you've lost the fight. If you spawn in at A on this map, at the start of the match, as the defenders like I did, you're greeted by a chilling sight as British soldiers, as well as armor, come rolling through the wheat fields that surround the flag. It was eerie and incredibly intense. Just check out how I experienced my first few seconds on this map. Even without textures and final detailing, that just looks amazing with them coming out of those farm fields. From here, the British have to make a river crossing to get to either B or C. This is actually easier than it looks because there is plenty of cover from the riverbanks, along with plenty of trees and bushes to hide you, as well as a central bridge for the armor. And if the British can get a small, perhaps, sidecar past the Germans, it can zoom all the way to the back of the map and start capping back there as well, which I saw a couple of times, and it completely threw the German defenses into disarray. I had a wild amount of fun fighting at every single point on this map. They were varied and interesting and pretty well spread out. I think my only feedback gameplay-wise for this map was that the armor was a little bit too powerful, and I say this as a defender but also as an attacker on this map. The sightlines are pretty wide open, so if the tank has just a single repairman, odds are he's going to be able to take out anybody who's trying to get close enough to destroy the tank. There's a couple of field guns for the defenders, but they're very exposed and don't last long. Repositioning those or adding a few more might help with the tanks rolling across this map, but hey, then again, this was historical. The Somme was one of the first locations where tanks were used in warfare. The second map that I want to show you guys is the Battle of Passchendaele. This was a battle that took place a little bit later on in World War I, specifically July to November of 1917, but it's more well known for the most deadly enemy that anyone fought during this battle, which was actually the weather. If you guys have ever listened to the Hardcore History Blueprints for Armageddon podcast on World War I, and if you haven't, you should, Dan Carlin spends a lot of time in that podcast talking about Passchendaele, because it's one of the most horrific battles of the war just from the environment. The absolute misery that both sides were dealing with was really just hard to describe in a brief video like this. Again, check out Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History, if you want to dig into the history of World War I and Passchendaele specifically. Battlefield 1's version of Passchendaele is almost entirely infantry focused, and it's overall a rather compact map. There is one tank spawn, a land ship for each side, to help support the infantry. This map is full of so much cover from trenches, fallen trees, and half-destroyed buildings for the infantry, the tanks really don't last long. Living up to this DLC's name, the horizon is truly apocalyptic. Smoke fills the horizon from burning buildings and distant parts of the battle, and the parts of the horizon that aren't on fire are completely full of massive walls of poison gas. There's also a crazy amount of destruction on this map. You guys can see that there's a lot of burning trees and collapsed trees spread all throughout the terrain, and you can just about run over all of them with the tanks. Additionally, a lot of the walls of the buildings in town are able to be destroyed as well, taking down cover for the infantry hiding inside. This is a map that I definitely can't wait to see once it's textured and all of the final lighting effects are in place. Again, this is the map that's really going to sell that apocalyptic feel for the DLC. Finally, let's take a look at the Battle of Caporetto. This was a battle on the Austro-Italian front during World War I and took place from October 24th to November 19th of 1917. The Austro-Hungarian forces, with the help of reinforcing German units, were actually able to completely collapse the 2nd Italian Army. This is also one of the battles that showed how effective stormtroopers were for charging into the trench networks and actually capturing them, as well as infiltration tactics to lock down a trench before your men got there. In Battlefield 1, this map takes place on a large mountain slope. This is a more straightforward conquest map with a couple of plane spawns for each side as well. So as you're fighting for the bridge at the center of the mountain pass at Charlie, you're probably going to see a couple of pilots dogfighting above you. Again, like Passchendaele, this is a map that I cannot wait to see textured. This part of the world is just an absolutely beautiful mountain region. I think it's going to look amazing in the final version of this map. Gameplay wise, it plays out about as you would expect. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in this map, but it looks like it's going to be a fun addition to the DLC as well, with some nice traditional conquest gameplay. Alright guys, that wraps up this early preview of Battlefield 1 Apocalypse. I'll be bringing you guys some updates once these maps do get some textures as they're heading closer to release date. Also, keep an eye out for some upcoming special Battlefield projects here on the channel. For now though, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.